Welcome back. Alright, so in my last video I covered the line art. This time I will be able to get coloring done. Actually, I could probably even get shading done depending on how soon I start, with less talking. I don't know if you prefer that. Less talking, more drawing. Of course, that's what we're here for. I didn't change much since the last video. The only thing I did was make a new layer and call it coloring. The line art layer, which is all of this, is on top and locked at multiply. Now the reason for multiply is all colors underneath this layer will blend in with the top layer. The reason why you see many people do that for line art is if you don't, well, it's not critical, but if you're trying to extract line art, or you're extracting something from another layer, and you put that on the top, and you have the coloring on the bottom, if you ever use the wand, the magic wand tool, and you ever notice that you get a jagged edge effect going on with the line art layer, that's normal. Unfortunately, that's not what you want. So the best way to remove that is to put that at multiply, and that will ensure you just get that strong black of the lines and not the white edge around it, especially if you use the magic wand. Now that's the case for scanning. I don't really need to do this for this because I use the tablet, so everything was done purely drawn in Photoshop. So it's almost personal preference. I've sometimes seen it drawn without it, so it really depends on what you're doing. So I'm basically just giving it the colors it needs. I have a palette for her. Actually, I have my own swatch set. I think it's a good idea. You should do this. What this makes you have is all the colors you need, and you don't have to draw a palette layer. What a palette layer is, what I like to call it, is you've seen probably several people put splats of color like this, and they put it on their own layer. And then all they do to get that color is, while you're on the brush, you hold Alt, and you reference that color. So it's a good shortcut. It is a good shortcut. I don't always do that because everything is in my swatches set, which all I gotta do is go on the right, click it, and then go back to resuming color. So it's not a big deal. It's just shortcut keys. As you get more skill with Photoshop, you will definitely put everything on shortcuts. And I guarantee you with time, you'll be doing everything in shortcuts. You'll be using the keyboard a little bit more often than actually going to the menu and navigating whatever. How can we forget those big ears? Come on. Now, here's something I know some people do, and I do it all the time. I fall victim to this plenty. If you're a perfectionist, like me, you are going to want to color everything outside the lines. You see how I'm just going crazy? I'm not caring about going over anything? Well, that's a good and bad thing. Don't worry about that so much. Because as long as you have the colors underneath, that's not going to be the problem. That's not going to cause any issues. As long as you have the topmost layer locked and you're coloring the layer you're working on now, you'll be fine. Oh, speaking of locking layers, make a habit of locking layers you're not using. So the line art, I have it locked before I began this coloring layer. The reason why is you don't want to actually start coloring in your line art layer. At least in this case, you'll know you're coloring it. See? But with other colors, you might accidentally start coloring the wrong layer. Okay, so let's save it. Save it because we want our progress to be saved. Alright, that was just the flats, and let's quickly get in the coloring before time is wasted. Now, if you're doing everything on one layer, it's a good idea to make sure they are pretty much easily accessible within their own layer. So, for example, I did not make a new layer to do this. This is still the coloring layer, but I have it set in such a way. That if I really need to go back to this, I don't need to make the fuss of making channels. All I gotta do is just select it. So she looks a little weird. So let's give this a black. Now don't mind the anime eyes. Sometimes I do have a little bit of an anime style, but I really try not to associate myself with I draw anime. I can, but I don't. I really do have my own style. So It's influenced by enemy. Now we want to get that hair colored. What color should I give her? Well, what color can I give her? Hi. Let's experiment with green hair. Now, two things you can do here. Let's save again. Two things you can do. You can give her the color. Let's do green hair. Yeah, it works. You can do the green hair now on the same layer, or you can make a new layer. We call it hair. And this will be on top. You can do it this way if you want. Probably for neat sake, let's just have it in its own layer. I'll probably cover that in a later video, doing everything in one layer. You can. Oh, you can. Especially in Painter, you're going to want to. But unlike Painter, this does not have that nice underpainting ability. You can mimic that. Okay. You can mimic that, but it's almost not needed. Again, don't worry about it being neat. When you rough something out, well, or blocking, it's just blocking. It's just knowing where everything is. So don't go crazy with the details just yet. And as much as I love details, I keep telling myself, don't worry, not yet. Patience. Patience is the key. I always say that. Also not hitting the undo button as much as I used to. So that's good. I think a good sign is you're not using the undo button. It's your best friend. Use it and abuse it, of course, but you don't want to spend so much time going back and making mistakes, especially with how simple this is. All you're doing is just coloring. So if you need to change something, you just press E and then use the eraser. That's it. Well, of course, all you gotta do is press undo, and it's even faster. Well, yeah, but you don't want to spend time making more corrections than blocking in details. Another thing with line arts is, unless you're drawing it by the picture itself, you don't have to worry about staying in the lines of the line art. Remember, your line art should be used as reference. Unless you're working off someone else's line arts and you're using it for the picture. If you have solid lines, you see how mine looks kind of gestury over here? Well, that I do when I do pencil drawing anyway, so this edgy sketches, that's normal for me. You can go back and remove that anytime you want. Remember, now the line art's in its own layer, it's not a problem. Alright, so all this blockiness, what do we do here? Let's see, save it again. Now, like I said, you can use this as reference, or you can use it the way it is. If you turn off the line art layer, yeah. She's spooky. So we're gonna leave it on for simple sake. And back to here. Okay.